Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to you, O Israel.
What if I told you that one of the most powerful Catholic teachings about time, hope, and salvation is sitting quietly in our churches and homes every Advent, often unnoticed? What if the Advent wreath is not just decoration, not just tradition, but a theological map of the human soul waiting for God? Many Catholics light the candles every year, yet few truly understand what they are proclaiming with fire and silence. We rush to Christmas, but Advent asks us to wait. We celebrate light, but Advent begins in darkness. We sing joy, but Advent first teaches longing. Today, we will ask 3 profound questions. What does the Advent wreath really mean? Why are there 4 candles, and why these colors? What is the true Catholic tradition behind the Advent candles? By the end of this reflection, you will never look at an Advent wreath the same way again. Advent, the most misunderstood season. Before we understand the wreath, we must understand Advent itself. Advent is not simply the countdown to Christmas. It is a sacred tension between promise and fulfillment. In Catholic theology, Advent lives in 3 dimensions of time. The past, Christ has come in history. The future, Christ will come again in glory. The present, Christ desires to come now into your life. This is why Advent is both joyful and solemn. It reminds us that we are saved, yet still waiting. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux spoke of 3 comings of Christ in Bethlehem, at the end of time, and the hidden coming into the soul. The Advent wreath exists to teach this mystery without words. Why a wreath? The shape that preaches. The first thing we must notice is the shape. The Advent wreath is circular, with no beginning and no end. This is not accidental. In Catholic symbolism, the circle represents God's eternity, His faithfulness, love that has no expiration. Long before Christianity, circular wreaths were signs of victory and hope. But the Church baptized this symbol, transforming it into a proclamation. God's promises never expire. When Advent begins, the wreath silently preaches. History is not random. Time is moving toward fulfillment. The wreath tells us, God was faithful yesterday. God is faithful today. God will be faithful tomorrow. Evergreen, life that refuses to die. The wreath is traditionally made of evergreen branches. Even in winter, when trees appear dead, the evergreen remains alive. This is Catholic theology in botanical form. The evergreen declares, life persists in apparent death. Hope survives cold seasons. God's grace does not wither in darkness. Isaiah prophesied, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. The evergreen wreath whispers, even when you feel spiritually barren, God is still alive in you. The Advent wreath, a theology of waiting, light, and faithful time. The Advent wreath is far more than a seasonal decoration. It is a profound theological symbol that teaches the Church how to live, wait, and hope within sacred time. At its core, the Advent wreath presents a theology of time that marks the passage of time not with numbers or deadlines, but with increasing light. Each week does not simply pass. It fills with meaning. The gradual illumination of the candles teaches that salvation does not arrive abruptly, but unfolds slowly and deliberately, just as God has always worked throughout salvation history. From creation, through covenant and prophecy, to the incarnation, the wreath silently teaches that God is never late. He uses waiting as a means of formation. The circular shape of the wreath deepens this lesson. The circle, with no beginning and no end, symbolizes God's eternity, His unchanging faithfulness, and the completeness of divine love. During Advent, this shape reassures believers that waiting is not wasted time, but time held securely within God's eternal purpose. Each candle adds light, but darkness is not immediately banished. This teaches believers to expect God's work to unfold gradually, often invisibly, and to trust even when clarity is incomplete. Why 4 candles? The rhythm of salvation. Now, we arrive at the heart of the mystery. Why 4 candles? Because Advent is not rushed. Salvation unfolds slowly, intentionally, mercifully. The 4 candles correspond to the 4 Sundays of Advent. but the theology runs deeper. They represent four movements of longing in the human heart and in salvation history. Each candle teaches us how to wait. The four candles of the Advent wreath correspond not only to the 4 Sundays of Advent, but also to 4 stages of spiritual formation. Each candle represents a virtue that shapes the believer's heart in preparation for Christ. The colors of the candles communicate theology visually. Purple signifies repentance, expectation, and royal dignity, emphasizing that waiting involves purification and readiness for the coming king. Rose, or pink, introduced on Gaudete Sunday, interrupts the penitential tone with joy. It reminds the church that joy is not postponed until perfection. It is already present because God is faithful. This balance prevents Advent from becoming either sober or shallow, holding together reverence and rejoicing. At the center of the wreath stands the Christ candle, traditionally white and lit on Christmas. Its central placement teaches that Christ is the meaning of time, the fulfillment of waiting, and the light that gives meaning to every other light. Advent does not end in abstraction or sentimentality. It culminates in the incarnation, God with us. The first candle, hope, the prophet's flame. The first candle is traditionally purple. Purple is a color of penitence, preparation, royal expectation. This candle represents hope. Hope teaches trust in God's promises even when fulfillment seems distant. It recalls the prophets, especially Isaiah, who spoke into darkness while waiting for a Messiah they would never see with their eyes. Hope is not optimism. Hope is trust when fulfillment is delayed. This candle asks us, do you still trust God when the promise feels distant? Biblical hope says, God has spoken, and that is enough. The second candle, peace. The second candle is also purple. It represents peace, but not comfort. Peace forms stability and faithfulness amid uncertainty and delay. This is the peace of the journey. It reminds us of Israel's long wandering, Mary's difficult yes, Joseph's silent obedience. Peace here does not mean everything is easy. It means God is present even when life is unsettled. Jesus later says, "My peace I give you, not as the world gives." This candle asks, can you remain faithful while still waiting? The third candle, joy. The third candle is pink. Why pink? Because joy interrupts discipline. Joy proclaims confidence in God's nearness even before the waiting ends. This Sunday is called Gaudete Sunday. Rejoice in the middle of waiting. The church dares to proclaim, joy is already near. The rose candle reminds us, salvation is not only future. God's nearness is already unfolding. Christian joy is not denial of suffering. It is confidence that suffering is not final. The fourth candle, love, the fulfillment. The final purple candle represents love. Love is the reason for the incarnation. God does not come because we deserve him. God comes because he loves. This candle prepares us to recognize Christmas is not sentiment. It is surrender. Love enters history as vulnerability. Love teaches surrender to God's will and readiness to receive him fully. Together, these virtues prepare believers to receive Christ not as an abstract idea, but as a living person. The Christ candle, light has arrived. At Christmas, the white Christ candle is lit. White signifies purity, victory, resurrection. The central candle declares, the waiting was not in vain. The light has entered the darkness. John's gospel proclaims, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The Advent wreath as a spiritual mirror. The Advent wreath is not just something we look at. It looks back at us. It asks, where am I still waiting? Where have I lost hope? Where do I need God's light? Each candle exposes a part of the soul. In a world obsessed with speed, Advent teaches patience. In a culture addicted to noise, the wreath teaches silence. In a time of despair, the candles teach hope. The Advent wreath is a theology of light spoken through fire. It proclaims, God keeps his promises slowly, faithfully, lovingly. As you light the candles this Advent, remember, you are not just counting days. You are rehearsing eternity. Which Advent candle speaks most deeply to your life right now? Hope, peace, joy, or love, and why? Share with us in the comments.
O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice,